Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today we're diving into something I think we've all thought about at one point or another. How can you tell if someone really values you? Relationships can be tough sometimes, right?
For sure.
It can be really hard to read between the lines and really understand, where you stand with someone.
Yeah, sometimes it feels like we're all speaking totally different languages when it comes to showing we care.
Exactly. And that's exactly why we're taking a deep dive today into this article called 4 Behaviors of a Woman Who Doesn't Value You. Leave Her Now.
Oh, interesting.
Now, before anyone gets hung up on the title,
Right.
we're going to unpack this in a way that works for any relationship, no matter, who's involved.
I like it.
So think of this as a deep dive into the psychology of relationships.
Okay.
To help all of us, get a clearer picture of what's really going on in our relationships.
That's awesome.
So the first thing this article talks about is she never makes time.
And this is a great example of how important priorities really are. I mean, we always say time is our most valuable resource, right?
Right.
But how we choose to spend our time really says a lot about what we value the most.
Sure.
It doesn't mean someone has to be available to you, like 24/7 to show they value you.
Right.
But you should notice, where they're focusing their attention.
Yeah.
And if you're in that picture.
Yeah, I remember the article said, if someone's always saying they're too busy, that can be a red flag.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. If you were really a priority to someone, wouldn't they try to fit you into their life, even if they had a crazy schedule?
Yeah.
It might not always be, some big grand gesture. But even small things like texting you to say hi or just checking in can really show you that they care.
So it sounds like it's not really about the amount of time, but more about the quality of attention they're giving you.
Exactly. Think about it. Imagine you're trying to talk to someone, but they're on their phone the whole time, or they just seem distracted.
Oh, yeah.
How would that make you feel?
Not great.
Probably not very important.
No, not at all.
And that feeling of not being important,
Yeah.
that can be a real downer in any relationship.
Totally. All right, let's move on to the second behavior. Your efforts go unnoticed.
Oh, this is a big one.
Yeah, this feels super relevant, because everyone's so busy and distracted these days.
It's true. There's so much going on all the time that it's easy to miss the little things people do for each other.
Right.
Even those small acts of kindness.
Yeah, but what's really interesting is what the article said about how when your efforts go unnoticed, it might not just be an accident.
Right.
It could be a sign of a bigger problem in the relationship.
Yeah, because when someone appreciates what you do, it's like they're saying, hey, I see what you did, and it
Yeah.
means something to me.
Right.
But when that appreciation is missing, it can make you start to question your worth. Like maybe you don't matter as much as you thought you did.
It's almost like you're speaking different languages.
Totally.
No matter how hard you try to show them you care through your actions, they're just not getting the message.
Exactly. And that can be really frustrating. Imagine you put a lot of effort into a gift for someone or do something nice for them, and they barely even react.
Yeah, that's happened to me before. It definitely hurts.
It does. And if that keeps happening, it can make you feel like nothing you do matters.
Right.
And that can lead to resentment over time.
So it's not about wanting praise for every little thing you do. It's
Yeah.
about feeling like the other person sees you and appreciates everything you bring to the relationship.
You got it. It's
Yeah.
about feeling like you make a difference in their life.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, on to number 3. She shows 0 emotional investment.
Oh, this is a big one.
Yeah, and I think we can all agree that emotional connection is at the heart of any meaningful relationship, right?
Absolutely.
It's what binds us together.
It is.
But sometimes we can mistake just being physically present with actually being emotionally available.
You're so right.
Just because someone's there doesn't mean they're really invested in the relationship.
So true.
The article talked about the difference between being emotionally available and being emotionally detached. Can you explain that a bit more?
Sure. Think of it this way. Being emotionally available is like keeping the door to your heart open. You're willing to let someone in to share your deepest thoughts and feelings, your hopes and fears.
Yeah, it's like that feeling of safety and comfort where you can be yourself completely.
Exactly. On the other hand, being emotionally detached is like having a big do not disturb sign on your heart all the time.
Oh, wow.
It doesn't mean you're a bad person or that you don't care.
Right.
Some of these people do this to protect themselves,
Yeah.
but it creates distance in the relationship that can be really hard to overcome.
So how does that emotional detachment actually show up in a relationship?
Well, one of the biggest signs is a lack of curiosity.
Yeah.
If someone is really into you, They'll be fascinated by your world.
Yeah.
They'll want to know everything about your day, your dreams, your struggles.
Right.
They'll ask questions and really listen to what you have to say. And they'll remember the details.
So they're not just passively listening.
Right.
They're really engaged in your life and your story.
Exactly. And it goes beyond just asking, how is your day?
Right.
They really want to understand your perspective, your thoughts, and your feelings.
They want you to feel seen and heard.
Exactly.
Now, there was something in the article that really stuck with me. It said, think about how long you're willing to wait for someone to become emotionally invested.
Ooh, that's a good one.
That's a powerful question, isn't it?
It is. Because we all have different needs when it comes to emotional intimacy, right?
Yeah.
Some people are okay with keeping things surface level,
Yeah.
but others want a much deeper, more meaningful connection.
And it's important to know what you need and whether you're getting that in your relationship.
You got it. Because you deserve to be with someone who not only can be emotionally intimate, but who wants to be with you.
That's so true. Is there anything else we should keep in mind about emotional investment before we move on?
Just remember, it has to go both ways.
Yeah.
Both people have to be willing to open up, be vulnerable, and work on that connection together.
Such a good point. Okay, so let's move on to the last behavior the article talks about, the respect gap. This one seems pretty straightforward,
Yeah.
but I bet there's more to it than meets the eye.
Oh, definitely. Because respect is about so much more than just grand gestures or not being rude to someone.
Right.
It's in the little things we do every day. It's how we listen to each other, the words we choose, even our tone of voice.
So it's those tiny moments, those small comments and actions that can really tell us how someone feels about us.
Exactly. Like they say, the devil is in the details.
Yeah.
Sometimes the most important things aren't the big flashy things, but how someone treats you consistently in those everyday moments.
Totally. The article compared it to a house with a shaky foundation. If there's no respect, those cracks are going to show up eventually.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Imagine being in a relationship where someone is always interrupting you or talking over you, or they just brush off your opinions. Even if they don't mean to be hurtful, it sends the message that your thoughts and feelings aren't as important as theirs.
Oh man, I hate that feeling of being talked over or ignored.
It's the worst.
It's like they're silencing you,
And that can really damage your self-esteem over time.
right?
You know, our self-worth is like a delicate plant. It needs care and respect to grow.
I love that analogy.
But when someone disrespects us, it's like they're pouring weed killer all over that plant,
Oh, yeah.
slowly killing our sense of worth.
And it's not always those big dramatic moments of disrespect either.
No.
The article even talked about those little subtle digs, those backhanded compliments disguised as jokes.
No. Those are the worst.
They can be really hard to deal with.
They are.
Yeah.
Because on the surface, they seem harmless, maybe even funny.
Right.
But underneath, they're really disrespectful.
It's like when someone says something like, oh, that dress looks great on you for your age, or you're so smart for someone who didn't go to college.
Exactly. You might laugh it off in the moment, but those little jabs can really start to get to you.
They make you start to doubt yourself.
Totally.
And I think that's what makes this whole conversation about respect so important. It's not just about being polite.
Right.
It's about creating a space where everyone feels safe and respected and heard.
You got it. Respect is the foundation of every healthy relationship.
Yes.
It means recognizing that the other person has value, even if you don't always agree with them.
Absolutely. Welcome back to our deep dive into you know how to tell if someone really values you. We've already talked about those first three behaviors. And not making time for you. Your efforts going unnoticed and showing zero emotional investment. Let's circle back to that last one, though, the respect gap. There's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah, it's a big one.
It is.
Because it's easy to think of respect as this big, obvious thing, like if someone's being openly rude or mean to you.
Right.
But the more subtle ways that respect shows up or doesn't show up in our everyday interactions, I think are way more telling.
Yeah. Right. Those small moments, those offhand comments, those little actions can actually tell us a lot about what's really going on in a relationship.
Exactly like that saying, devil's in the details.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes it's not about the big grand gestures, but how someone treats you consistently in those everyday moments. That really matters.
Totally. And the article even used this analogy of a house built on a shaky foundation.
Oh, yeah.
If that foundation of respect isn't there, those cracks are going to start showing up eventually.
Exactly. Just imagine for a second a relationship where someone's constantly interrupting you or talking over you. Or they just dismiss your opinions like they don't even matter.
Right.
Even if they're not trying to hurt you, it sends a clear message.
Yeah.
Your thoughts and feelings aren't as important as theirs.
Yeah, that feeling of being talked over or dismissed is never fun.
No, it's not.
It makes you feel like your voice doesn't matter.
Exactly. And over time, that can really take a toll on your self-esteem. Think of it this way. Our self-worth is like a delicate plant.
Oh, I like that.
It needs to be nurtured and cared for to thrive.
Yeah.
But when someone disrespects us, it's like they're pouring weed killer on that plant.
Wow, that's such a powerful image.
It is, right?
It is.
And it's not always about those big, obvious moments of disrespect either.
Right.
Like, the article even mentioned those little subtle digs, those backhanded compliments disguised as jokes.
Oh, yeah, those are the worst.
They are, because they're so sneaky. On the surface, they might seem harmless, even playful.
Right.
But underneath, there's this sting of disrespect.
Like when someone says, oh, that dress looks great on you for your age, or you're so smart for someone who didn't go to college.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Those kinds of things. And you might laugh it off in the moment.
Right.
But over time, those little jabs can really start to chip away at your self-esteem.
They make you question yourself and your worth.
Yeah, they do.
And I think that's what makes this whole conversation about respect so important. It's not just about being polite or avoiding conflict. It's about creating relationships where everyone feels safe, valued, and heard.
You hit the nail on the head. Respect is the foundation of any healthy relationship. It's about recognizing that the other person has value even when you disagree with them or see things differently.
So how do we apply all of this to our own lives?
Yeah, that's the big question.
Let's say someone's listening to this and they're recognizing these behaviors: lack of time, unnoticed efforts, emotional distance, and disrespect. What should they do?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is.
And honestly, there's no one-size-fits-all answer.
Right.
But one of the first things I always tell people to do is check in with themselves.
Okay.
How are these behaviors making you feel? Are you feeling drained or resentful or unappreciated?
Because sometimes we get so caught up in trying to make a relationship work that we forget about our own needs and feelings.
Exactly. And that's why self-awareness is so important.
Yeah.
It's about listening to that inner voice and asking yourself, am I being treated the way I deserve to be treated?
I love that. Listening to your inner voice.
Right.
It's like having this internal compass guiding you toward what feels right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that inner voice might be saying, hey, something's not right here. You deserve better than this.
So what happens when that inner voice starts getting louder? What are some concrete steps someone can take?
Well, one of the hardest but most important steps is communication. You have to be willing to have an open and honest conversation with the other person about how you're feeling.
I know. That can be so scary, though. What if they get defensive or just shut down completely?
I get it. It can be really tough to have those conversations.
Yeah.
And there's no guarantee they'll go the way you want them to.
Right.
But here's the thing. You can't change someone else's behavior,
Right.
but you can control how you respond to it.
So you're saying it's about setting boundaries, even if that means distancing yourself from the relationship.
Exactly. Boundaries are like the guardrails on a winding road.
Ooh, I like that.
They help keep us safe and on track.
Yeah.
And sometimes setting those boundaries means having the courage to say, this isn't working for me anymore.
That can be such a hard decision to make, especially if you really care about the other person.
It is. But walking away from a relationship that's no longer serving you can be an act of self-love and respect.
It's about putting your own well-being first.
Exactly. And creating space for something better to come into your life.
This has been such a great conversation.
Yeah, it has.
I feel like we've really dug deep into these behaviors.
We have. And I think the most important thing for people to remember is that recognizing these patterns is just the first step.
Right.
It's about taking that awareness and using it to make choices that align with your values and self-worth.
So it's not about blaming the other person or saying they're a bad person.
Right.
It's about understanding the dynamics of the relationship and figuring out what's best for you.
Exactly. Because in the end, the goal isn't to fix the other person or the relationship.
Right.
It's about empowering yourself to create healthy, fulfilling relationships where you feel valued, respected, and loved for who you are.
And that's a goal worth striving for.
Absolutely.
Now, before we wrap up this deep dive, I want you to take a moment and think about the 4 behaviors we've talked about today. Lack of time, unnoticed efforts, emotional distance, and disrespect.
Take a minute.
Have you experienced any of these in your own relationships?
Yeah.
And if so, how did they make you feel?
It's important to sit with those feelings and really understand them. Sometimes simply acknowledging those experiences is the first step toward creating positive change.
That's such a good point. And we're going to continue this conversation in part 3, where we'll explore some practical strategies for setting boundaries, communicating your needs, and ultimately creating relationships that truly nourish your soul. So stay tuned. Welcome back to the deep dive. I hope you've all had some time to, think about what we've talked about so far.
Yeah.
About how to recognize when someone might not be valuing you as much as you deserve.
It can be tough to face those realizations, right?
It can.
But I think sometimes those tough moments are exactly what we need to push us in the right direction.
Totally. It's like a wake-up call.
It is.
That helps us see things more clearly and make positive changes in our lives.
It's like you're finally seeing things for what they really are.
Exactly.
And realizing, hey, this isn't how a healthy relationship should feel.
So let's talk about what to do next. We've identified the behaviors, we've checked in with our own feelings now. How do we actually start creating healthier, more fulfilling relationships?
Well, one of the most powerful tools we have is communication.
Okay.
It's about finding your voice and being brave enough to talk about what you need and expect from a relationship.
Yeah, that's definitely easier said than done.
It is.
Those conversations can be so intimidating.
They can.
Especially if you're worried about hurting someone's feelings or causing a conflict.
I hear you. Being vulnerable can be scary.
It really can.
But if you're feeling constantly undervalued or disrespected in a relationship, something has to change.
Right.
And talking about it is often the first step.
So where do you even begin with a conversation like that?
Well, first things first. Pick a time and place where you can both feel comfortable and safe. You don't want to have this kind of conversation when you're in the middle of an argument or you're both stressed out.
Yeah, make sure it's a calm and neutral environment.
Exactly. And when you do talk, try to focus on I statements.
Okay.
Instead of blaming the other person, just share how their actions make you feel.
So instead of saying, you never listen to me,
Right.
you could say, I feel unheard when I get interrupted.
Exactly. It's about taking ownership of your feelings without putting the other person on the defensive.
And being specific can really help too, right?
Absolutely. Give clear examples. Like instead of saying, you never help around the house, you could say, I felt overwhelmed last week when I had to do all the dishes and laundry by myself.
Those specific examples really paint a picture of how their actions affect you.
They do. And don't forget to listen to their side of the story too. Remember, good communication goes both ways.
So what if you have that conversation? You express your needs, but nothing changes. What then?
Well, that's where boundaries come in.
Okay.
Boundaries are essential for any healthy relationship. They're like the lines you draw in the sand that say, this is what I'm okay with and this is what I'm not okay with.
And those boundaries will look different for everyone.
Of course. It's about what feels right for you.
Right.
For some
right.
people, a boundary might be saying, I'm not available to talk after 9 p.m.
Yeah.
For others, it might be, I won't tolerate being yelled at.
And those boundaries can change over time, too.
Exactly. Your needs and limits might shift as you grow and change.
So let's say you've communicated your needs, you've set your boundaries, but the other person still isn't meeting you halfway. What do you do then?
That's when you have to make some tough decisions.
Yeah.
Sometimes, no matter how hard you try, you have to accept that a relationship just isn't working anymore.
And that might mean walking away.
It might.
Yeah.
And that's never easy, especially if you love and care about the other person.
It's so hard.
But sometimes walking away is the kindest thing you can do for yourself. It shows that you respect yourself enough to not settle for less than you deserve.
It's about prioritizing your own well-being and happiness.
Exactly. And opening yourself up to something better.
It's like closing one chapter so you can start a new one.
Exactly. And remember, you're not alone in this. Everyone goes through relationship challenges at some point. And there's help out there, whether it's therapy or support groups, or even just talking to a trusted friend or family member.
Yeah, getting that outside perspective can be so valuable.
It can. It can help you see things more clearly and make choices that are truly in your best interest.
Well, this has been such a thought-provoking deep dive.
Yeah, it has.
Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us today.
It was my pleasure.
And to our listeners, we hope this conversation has given you some things to think about and maybe even inspired you to start creating healthier, more fulfilling relationships. Remember, you are worthy of love and respect. Don't settle for anything less. And you have the strength to navigate these challenges and build the relationships you deserve. Until next time, take care.